Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where we finally have our Thursday night game of the year. Short turnaround for both teams to be able to prepare for a divisional opponent, a game that I think many people had marked on the calendar as must-see TV. The Bengals coming to M&T Bank Stadium, coming off an unfortunate loss for them that's kind of making their fans go into a tailspin. And talk about it, we got Justin here, our favorite Bengals guest, to let us know what's going on in Bengals country.
Yeah, very, very happy to be back for number 9, maybe 8, 9, 10 appearances. I don't know. Ran out of space to count.
There you go. Yeah, we had the playoff games. That doesn't, hurt your total. So Definitely always enjoy having you on and hearing your analysis. So let's just start off, man. Like, where are you guys? What's the head at after losing to Houston 30-27? Couldn't quite pull off the comeback.
In my head, I kind of feel like Cincinnati looked past Houston a little bit, which was easy to do because it's the Texans, but Stroud is showing that he's clearly legit. It looked to me, I'm not ready to give up yet. It looked like a good team having a bad day and not having a proper game plan for a rookie quarterback, which in my experience with the Bengals seems to always happen. They let Lamar Jackson do it on his rookie debut, and Mike White against the Jets. So I wasn't surprised when CJ Stroud came out and just kind of picked apart the defense. They are a preparation D that needs more game tape than Stroud probably could provide. They pulled off a couple of good turnovers, but then the Texans D did the same to Joe Burrow, and it just, last second field goal. It's like, dang.
You're definitely right, man. We were just actually talking about this before, about Stroud, and how seemingly tons of people are, just kicking themselves with the conversation about, do you draft Stroud or Young first overall with the, and all their fantasy drafts and things like that. And everyone seemed like overlooked Stroud. And now, a couple of games in at this point, I mean, over half a season, basically, Stroud definitely looks legit. He's had some really good games against some good opponents. And, clearly, even though the Bengals game was a close one, I mean, it's a good win. Nevertheless, I mean, puts up tons of stats and looks fantastic. So, if I were a Bengals fan too, like I wouldn't consider this loss like, the Ravens losing the Colts or something earlier, where it's like, that was a bad loss against a bad team. Like, the Texans are not a bad team. We played them week 1, and I remember, we were surprised, I think, at just how good their defense was playing. Looking at the roster, and we were like, oh yeah, they got nobody. They're a pretty well-coached team. I think they're going to do some damage this year, so no shame in that.
So I didn't realize you played the Texans right before the last Bengals-Ravens game, and now we played the Texans before this one. Is that? Oh. Didn't realize that was happening, but okay.
Yeah, we got the Bengals, or rather, we got Houston at a better time. Stroud was still getting acclimated. Some of their younger guys getting ramped up, but now they really look like a actual playoff contender potentially. I mean, the AFC is so stacked.
Yeah, they might sneak in. The Jags are kind of waffling a bit, it seems like.
Yeah, the AFC South is looking like it might be wide open right now, but that is interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, Cincinnati got Houston right before playing Baltimore again. I have in our notes, you look at this matchup between these two teams, you could kind of subtitle it Through the Looking Glass. I mean, both these teams are coming in. There's a lot of parallels. Cincinnati did not have their best game against Houston, but let's not let that overshadow a 4-game win streak that you guys had on, where you looked very good, just like, the Ravens themselves were on a 4-game win streak coming into what would eventually be a loss to the Browns. The defense, I guess, is what we'll start at with talking with the Bengals, because that is that was a really glaring hole against Houston. I mean, you look at this win streak, you guys held Seattle to 13 points. You held San Francisco in check. Probably a lot of people saw that Sunday night game against Buffalo, that the Bengals, you guys only won by 6, but that game wasn't as close as that final score indicates. But then you see what happens with Houston. We have a stat here from Nate Tice put this out yesterday after the game. Apparently, the Bengals surrendering 17 explosive plays against Houston, which was tied for the fourth most in an NFL game since 2000. So a lot of big plays. Certainly didn't seem like the defense that was able to keep the Bills' offense in check. What do you think? What happened in that game is indicative of things to come? Did the Texans expose something, or is it just, like you said, maybe more of just, hey, this is the Texans, we've got the Ravens next week, kind of looking past the matchup?
Yeah, I don't want to make a whole lot of excuses, but there are I have a list of things they could have done differently that went wrong, or that not could have done differently, but things that just happened. Like number one, Sam Hubbard was out on the defense. I don't know if he'll be back for Baltimore this week or not. That's up in the air. So that side of the line was having some trouble. So they weren't able to get enough pressure on Stroud, at least not as much as they normally would have, which gave him more time. And then I mentioned earlier the defense being, needing to see on tape. The Texans stayed in zone, or the Bengals stayed in zone D most of the time, and were just kind of challenging Stroud to find the holes, and he did. And part of it was a lack of tape. Like you guys, if I said, what's Jamar Chase going to do against the nickel high zone? You guys could kind of, you know what routes he'll stem. But if we're like, what's Noah Brown going to do against a cover two shell? We're like, who? So I'm sure the defense was just like, who's, and they let, guys go by that they probably shouldn't have, trying to pick which receiver. Like they were paying way more attention to Robert Woods than they probably needed to. So I think it's not indicative of things to come, but it is more indicative of a trend of the team that, the 0-2 start, the 1-3 start, they're slow. They got to learn. They're good at learning, but if they don't pick it up fast enough, and you've got injuries slowing down other pieces of the defense, then you're just going to have that where it was a close game. You probably should have won, but in the end, it took 30 seconds to get down into field goal range and boot it through. So I think they'll be more prepared against you this week on Thursday, but without Hubbard, and Hendrickson will probably be out this week as well. I would say you're probably going to also be looking at Lamar Jackson having plenty of time. And I'm curious to see how the game plan shifts, but they leave me out of that loop.
That's unfortunate. I will say, we have our own issues. Moses was a full participant in practice. It was a walkthrough today, so we'll see. He's been on and off the injury report with a shoulder issue. Stanley got rolled up on and had this knee issue that looked really scary, but then it seems like it might just be day to day, but we'll see if he's available. So it makes our tackle situation vulnerable as well. So I think that's definitely a matchup to pay attention to, is pass rush and ability to get to Lamar Jackson and seeing how that impacts plays downfield. One thing we talked about last week is that we saw a lot of cover one looks from the Browns, but we didn't really attack the sidelines deep much because there was a lot of pressure, and Lamar would look to try to create with his feet rather than go deep. Maybe that'll be a point of emphasis, but you guys play a lot of cover too, so it might not be on the table for this game. Another thing I wanted to talk about is since we played you guys went 5-1 until this most recent loss, with your only loss coming in a very kind of embarrassing game against the Titans. It was every other game, decent win, close win, statement win against the 49ers, good win in primetime against the Bills, but then this weird Titans stinker. But that was still in the time when Burrow was recovering from his injury. I think now we're looking at a healthy Burrow. You look at the passing yards,
Yeah, that was definitely his last game of it's not 100%. And I was of the opinion at the time they should have just let him sit. If you're going to lose 27-3, why you don't need Burrow in there for that? I could do that. But so now that he's healthy, the risk, they're obviously, it's the NFL. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but I don't foresee another massive blowout could have happened. I think it'll be a close one. Probably won't go for the 500 some yards he did 2 years ago either. We won't go that high with the expectations though.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely helps to get that bye week right before the 49ers too. I think that was a nice way to kind of reset. You had the Cardinals game, which, Cardinals weren't that great, but the tight Seahawks game, a good opportunity to get healthy, reset. And like I said, you can really see a difference in the offense after the bye week with the health of Burrow and just everything around it.
Yeah, I mean, Burrow, he looks like a different quarterback now. I mean, he looks like he's back to the quarterback that we've seen the past couple of years. Looks very confident during the win streak. What can't be said is that he has a fully healthy receiver room. Now, there was a lot of questions as to whether Jamar Chase would play in this game against Houston. He did play and played pretty well. But T. Higgins was not able to suit up. Short week. We'll see what happens there. But Tyler Boyd stepped up and played well in that game until there was that drop in the end zone that could have
put that in my excuse list.
Yeah, exactly right. And then you guys also have Trenton Irwin, who looks like it, basically, we put him and Shaggy in the same room. I'm not sure if you can Scooby-Doo. I don't know if you can tell the difference between the two of them, but so you guys have some wide receiver depth, whether or not Higgins plays. But what are the reports right now looking at it? Do you think Higgins suits up, and if not, do you think it's going to be more, just Boyd's the vet, he'll shake off, or are they going to sneak in Irwin some?
Yeah, the Higgins injury concerns me the most because it happened in practice, and it always seems like, for whatever reason, those are the worst. It is a hamstring. It's nothing season ending, but I don't think he would want to push it for a short week. Chase is, I'm certain he'll be back. It's just a deep bruise from jumping 6 feet in the air and landing flat on his back. It hurts, but he can grit through it. He played with the hip injury a little bit last year that ended up in a fracture. So he can play through pain. And I think with this one, as opposed to the hip one last year, this is actually just pain. It's just a really bad fall, essentially. As far as the other receivers, Irwin's like a fan favorite. I don't know if you guys know that, but every Bengals fan loves him just because of that look. I mean, he doesn't look like a football player. And in fact, his very first career was an actor. He's from California, and he was in a bunch of commercials as a kid. His parents are actors, and he said, "Nah, I want to play football." And everyone loves him for that. One thing I would look out for is the tight end room this week. I know a couple of years ago when we had Uzama, he hung a couple of big games on you guys where he would be the breakout player and everyone else would kind of take a seat back. I know last year Hayden Hurst had a decent game. This year, the tight ends for the Bengals, losing Hurst to free agency, the tight end one they brought in was Irv Smith, who's okay when he's healthy, but there just hasn't been a lot of production from tight ends. I would anticipate maybe, with Chase being a maybe and with Higgins being out, or Chase not being 100% rather, I mean, that we might get some looks in. Drew Sample had a touchdown against the Bills. Irv Smith had one. Actually, that might have been against the Bills as well. But I would look for the tight ends to really get involved. I think that's going to be the bread and butter for just moving down the field at a pace this week.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Justin, because that was about to be my question. Was the tight end room one of the things? I think I had the Bengals this year for state of division, and I was definitely looking at that Hayden Hurst, him going to the Panthers. I was like, yeah, it's going to be huge. Just knowing that Sample's been a guy. He's been there for a while. He brings a little bit to the table, but he's not a guy I guess you would really want to scheme around that much.
No, he's best as a sixth tackle.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, one thing we actually talked about last week with the Browns, Ravens had a lot of trouble with Njoku, and it wasn't because of air yards. It was entirely yak. Njoku was just running over guys. So, I don't remember. Actually, I don't remember if that's a part of Sample's game or part of Smith's game, but if there's an opportunity to kind of exploit that, if I were the Bengals, I would take that shot. So.
There's also Tanner Hudson. He was like a practice squad signing that ended up on the roster, and I would put him as a tight end too right now. in Burrow's progressions. He probably has better hands than Irv Smith, a little faster. So we'll see. He might be the surprising one that all of a sudden you're just like, who?
Yeah, I mean, that is kind of that is one thing that I'm curious to see is a bit of an issue for this Ravens defense. It's just that, like you're saying, none of those tight ends are guys that singularly, feel like guys that you have to game plan for. But just the fact that you have so many out there, like we said last episode, I don't know, what the Browns did with Njoku was absolutely nothing special. It was screens, it was dump offs, it was, just it was at the line of scrimmage, had some room to run, and just the Ravens just couldn't wrap him up. It was nothing that any one of those tight ends that you guys have couldn't do. So, they'll look at that on tape. Hopefully that'll get shored up. But I'm sure that on a short week, Cincinnati will look at that and just be like, hey, this is something that we might be able to do if other stuff isn't working out. Just, go to that last read and dump it off to those guys, which I think, you guys have done a little bit. I think I've seen that in some of the highlights as of late with these guys.
Yeah, some of it's just a mentality for Joe Burrow. He still likes to take the deep shots, and that's fine sometimes. But we know when he needs to check it down, and that's it's just, I don't know. I won't say ego thing, but But against the Ravens, I could see him just getting in the game of like, get the yards, get the win, get the points, go where it needs to go. I think that'll be his mentality this week, because for both teams, this is kind of a do or die after the rough weekend.
Totally is. It's definitely. You guys would be 5-5 if you guys lost, which is just like unbelievable going into the season. I don't think anyone saw it playing out quite like that. And then the Ravens, of course, would probably, assuming that the Steelers have like a horseshoe up their butt, and the Browns, like one of them wins, they'd be behind in the division. So it's definitely a moment where both teams have all the motivation to win. No doubt about it. It's probably the highest leverage game of the whole season, frankly.
I am hoping that the AFC North will be the first team since the first division since the expanded playoffs to get all their teams into the wild card spots. It hasn't happened yet, but this would be the year.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I guess you really, with how bad the South and the East have been. Yeah, you're just looking for the Chargers to fall off, which doesn't feel like it's outside of possibility.
Oh, that's a sure bet. That's a sure bet.
I don't think their coach is going to make it past the year unless they do some kind of miracle turnaround. But
yeah, that's not a good situation there. But shifting gears to the defense, one guy I did want to talk about, who's been making some noise for you guys since after the last game between these two guys, is the cornerback you guys drafted in the second round this year, Cam Taylor-Britt, if I have that correct.
Yes. Oh, that was last year, right?
Oh, sorry, he was picked last year. Gotcha.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's had an incredible last 5 weeks. 4 interceptions, and including one against Josh Allen on that Sunday night game. I believe he almost had a touchdown against Houston, right?
Yeah, he had the run back all the way down to the 3 before someone tripped him up.
Yeah. So he's really been a playmaker for you guys. He was not on my radar before the game against us. So I did look back to see what he did against the Ravens. He did give up the big completion to Zay Flowers in that game. Now, granted, looking back on the play, I think he had pretty good position. It was just, and he had his arm almost deflect the ball, but Lamar was able to get it in there. Did have 2 penalties as well, but yeah, I mean, from your reaction, it sounds like you like what you've seen from this guy. So obviously he's doing playmaking. How's the past few weeks been for him, and should the Ravens watch out for him?
I think so. When you were saying there's one player I want to talk about on the defense, in my head I was like, it's got to be Cam Taylor-Britt, because he wasn't picked to be a starter, even though he was second round. He was last year. He didn't really play because he was behind in the depth chart. But this year, finally, he did play because of injuries a bit last year, but finally getting a chance to just be a full bore starter this year. One of my buddies is a Nebraska fan, and so he's been talking him up since we drafted him, and he finally pulled it out this year. Had several good interceptions so far. His open field tackling has also been pretty top notch. I mean, he's a little cornerback. Sometimes you're just going to get trucked over, but for the most part, he can take people down one on one. It's one of those pleasant surprises. You get a cornerback in the second round. You hope he'll pan out, and this one, it's like, yes, finally nailed a second round pick here, and that's good, since our starter last year was Eli Apple. He's not even on the team anymore this year, luckily. So it's after seeing a couple of years of that at the cornerback slot. We had for a few years out there William Jackson and just a slew of guys who played their rookie contracts out mediocrely and then left. And finally, it's like, good, we got a ball hawk. That's what we've been looking for.
Yeah, Justin, I got some other questions about the secondary group. I think it's a very interesting matchup going into the game. Awuzie is a little banged up, didn't get a full repertoire of snaps in the last game. We saw more of DJ Turner and Mike Hilton playing. Kind of curious what the early returns are on DJ Turner and how Mike Hilton's been shaping up since he joined the team.
Yeah, Hilton was one of those unexpected additions. He came over from the Steelers last year, or was it the year before? Anyway. But he's like a solid, just a solid tackler. He's not a ball hawk as much as some of the other guys. He'll get interceptions, but he's more of just a bruising tackler. He'll step up and stop the run. He'll knock the slot receiver coming across the middle. He's like some of the players that we were missing. Like for a while, Sean Williams before Jesse Bates was back there, and that was kind of his role. And that's what Mike Hilton stepped up as, just the more of a bruising defensive back. And then DJ Turner, that's another one that was like a question mark in training camp. Not really expected to do much, but just had flashes in camp. And then he's been getting plays, not starting, but getting quite a lot of play time in the defense, more so than I expected. And that pass breakup that the big one against the Texans that you were talking about in the fourth quarter, that was, kind of got my eyebrows raised. So he's, Hilton's the older one out of all those. I think he's the oldest on the team now, or not on the team, on the defensive backfield now, the oldest one. So there's a lot of young guys, which kind of makes it. That's kind of was some of the problem with C.J. Stroud picking him apart, was they just, they don't quite have the career to play zone the whole game like that. But the youth leads me more towards next year. I think we'll have some good matchups next year. This week, I don't think they're going to be too different than they were against the first game. I forget Lamar's exact stat lines, but I think they're going to focus more on clamping receivers down as opposed to just trying to play the cute little zone game.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I know Ravens been trying to figure out how to get Zay Flowers a little bit more involved, like he was in the first couple of weeks. This might be a good matchup for him to kind of bounce back. Obviously, he had a fairly big game the first time against you guys, but his footwork, I think, is just incredible. Against the Browns, I know he had that one catch where he just kind of like made a couple of moves and just got guys off of him really quickly and just able to find some space. Now, he didn't break anything big, but when you're talking about converting first downs, just those little extra moves to be able to pick up an extra couple of yards, pretty huge. So, Ravens are definitely looking for more from the passing game. I think it's kind of feast or famine sometimes. And so, it's interesting. I feel like we've gotten a lot more. I feel like we haven't had as much success, in the last couple of games recently, I think. Just against guys beating their mans consistently. It'll definitely be interesting with just the defensive ends that are going to be out on the Bengals. Pass rush will be a little bit less of a concern. So if I'm the Ravens, I'm looking forward to the matchup here. I think they might have a opportunity to kind of get their pass game back on track.
Yeah, the extra time that I'm sure Lamar will have without Hendrickson and Hubbard, man, that'll be a luxury.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, if you guys remember me waving and saying, giving fist bump when I heard that Sam Hubbard was going to be out, had nothing to do with pass rush, entirely to do with now we can't have a fumble recovery for your touchdown anymore. So good to. I'm so happy.
That's the memory. Like that name. You're going to be 80 years old and you'll hear the word Hubbard and you'll be like, "Don't say that."
Oh,
Never.
man.
Yeah.
Unless another play erases it, because I thought, now when we think of plays that we definitely don't want to remember with the Bengals, it used to be Boyd. Boyd was the one that came to mind. Now,
yeah,
I got to think to remember that one.
Green.
Did that take over? Did that take over Boyd, or did it just add to the pile?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think it took over because just because that one was a playoff win, and for whatever reason, I know for myself, I started to get some hope. I had turned off my emotions. I was just like, we're just in the playoffs. That's fine. That's great. Lamar's there. We're not going to do anything. Huntley had that scramble. She started having some hope, and then it was just crushed right there.
I was glued to the TV looking for a flag. Like I didn't want to celebrate. I was just like, "There's no yellow. There's no yellow."
That's how it goes.
Yep.
I think one thing we kind of skipped over a little bit when talking about the offense, though, is that your offensive line seems to be doing better than the last time we checked in with you guys. Seems like you're playing at a higher level, and I think this is a game that both quarterbacks would love to have some time in the pocket like any other quarterback, but could be won and lost by pressure.
Yeah, the offensive line struggled the first couple weeks like they did the year before, and I think that was every year. I think that was again just they didn't play them during the preseason, and because Joe Burrow was hurt again during training camp, they didn't click right. They didn't have the timing down. They didn't know each other as well, right? Like, the guy next to you, what he's going to do and who he might need help with, what he's going to miss. And they're finally picking all that up. Sacks still happen. I think Sheldon Rankins got to Burrow 2 or 3 times. So big boys are still going to be big boys. But now we've got at least a starting point to, Burrow can take a few seconds, get a look downfield, do what he needs to do, and it's not panic mode instantly anymore.
So, as our guest, Justin, we love to go into our bold predictions and see what you have first. You have a pretty decent history on the show of your bold predictions and score predictions. So,
my score predictions have been shockingly close a couple of times.
Yeah,
the bold predictions I go a little too bold, but that's the point, right?
That's right.
All right, so you guys all know I almost always pick the Ravens, and the Ravens have it on paper, and me being a pessimistic Bengals fan would say, "Yes, pick the Ravens." But you know what? Today's different. I'm gonna pick the Bengals this week. Right, first time I'm gonna pick them as the underdog. I'm gonna say Burrow comes out, throws a bunch of passes. The defense figures out a way to confound Lamar Jackson, and the Bengals win 30-13.
Whoa.
Feeling
That'd
strong.
be major depresso, man. You can't do that to a bunch of people leaving a stadium late at night.
A Thursday night road team doing 30-13. Wow.
Well, I figure if I keep giving the typical 27-24 score that always seems to happen, it'll happen again. So I'm gonna go way out there.
And
for the bold prediction, I am going to say that Andre Yusovas, the Bengals' 4th round wide receiver, has 100 yards receiving and a touchdown.
Oh, wow. I like it.
I gotta figure out how to spell his name so I can write this down here.
Iosivas. He's a rookie out of Princeton. He was on their track team, so he's just really fast. He's had a couple of touchdowns this year.
The broadcast. Yeah, I know he started to flash, and I never actually heard the name pronounced. So, appreciate that, Justin.
Oh, you're welcome. I think he would be. He's like the Bengals' Puka Nacua. You're just a fun, speedy little guy, a draft pick in the later rounds that you didn't know what was going to happen, and everyone's having fun with him.
All right, I'll go next. Bold prediction, we talked about how last week we really felt that was a matchup that the Ravens needed to get Mark Andrews the ball. He always does well against Cleveland. Just didn't really happen. I feel like in a game, short turnaround, you're going to go to the vet guy who's been there a lot. I'm going to say he's going to have 10 plus catches, 100 plus yards, and a touchdown. It's going to be a monster game for Mark Andrews against Cincinnati. As far as the game goes, really want the Ravens to win, obviously. I really want them to win. One thing that does give me pause about this game is I think that the Bengals are going to be slightly more desperate just because, the Ravens are at a slightly better position in the standings. Still have the bye week to come too, so the Bengals are slightly more rested. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm going to pick Cincinnati to win 31-27. That's my prediction for the game, and I hope I'm incorrect there.
Alec, you want to go?
Sure. That's depressing, my friend. Depressing to hear that, Peter, but I understand it entirely. So if you look at Vegas, they have us favored 3.5 points, over under 46. And I look at that and I start squinting at it and I think about it. I'm like, man, is that right? I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and say the Ravens win. They're going to win off the foot of Justin Tucker. It's going to be one of those games, and he'll give the town something to cheer about. He'll be lifted up, carried into the locker room. Probably giving the Lions spike. So I'm going to go ahead and say we repeat the score from earlier in the year, 27-24 Ravens, and game-winning field goal for Justin Tucker.
I am not going to pick the Bengals to win. I feel I've tried that before. I feel like early in the season,
the reverse psychology,
just going the reverse and just like mixed results. I'm going to pick the Ravens to win this one. I have a hard time thinking about just like if we're a Sunday game, I could understand that, but Thursday night, I think it's going to be tricky for the Bengals to come out. It doesn't work well in the visiting team's favor. That said, Ravens also have a sore taste in their mouth. I'm really looking forward to the defense on Thursday night. So I'm going to go with my bold prediction first. I think I'm actually looking at the stats now. Last week against Houston was the first multiple interception game from Burrow. I'm going to say they get another 2. You can split it up. Geno Hamilton, Geno Williams, maybe. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to say they get another 2 picks off Burrow. And I feel like I want it to be close, but honestly, I feel like it could be one of those games. Maybe get a late touchdown, and it might split away a little bit. So I'm going to say the Ravens win 34-24.
Quick stat before we go: the Ravens have only lost on Thursday Night Football as the home team once, at least according to StatMuse. And that was on October 21st, 1999, which I didn't even know they played Thursday night games then, so I'm not sure if that is accurate. But apparently, on that game, the Ravens lost to Kansas City 35-8, which is not a game that I remember. So I'll have to double check that. But if the Ravens have lost at home on Thursday Night Football, it has been quite some time.
Not this century, apparently.
Yeah. According to Pro Football Reference, it was a Thursday. This is taking on a life of its own. I got to research. Why was this game on a Thursday?
That's trying to think. That wouldn't have been like the opening game of the season?
No, it's middle of October. Middle of October, Thursday night game.
Well,
in 1999.
Well, according to this article from the Baltimore Sun from 2017, at that time they had a 6-3 record, 5-0 in M&T Bank. So we've got 6 seasons in between that. So hey, you don't have to look through 6 seasons now. But I'm looking forward to the good game. I think it's going to be a good one for sure. Yeah, excited to definitely be at this one. Even that was it the Sunday night game last year, also against the Bengals. That was also a really, really good one. That was a close game too, but great atmosphere. Love seeing the bank at night. It's a really great time.
Are you guys going to this one?
We are, yeah. All of us are going to be there.
All right.
Yeah, it's gonna be a great time. This is when we bring out all the stops for the tailgate. Although I must say, I think this year we've been really hitting on all cylinders. Very proud of the group, solid group. But we do an extra flex for prime time, no doubt about it. Well, Justin, as always, a pleasure to have you on. Great to hear more about our biggest rival, honestly, in the division at this point. And thanks again for joining us. We always appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to the game for sure.
Make sure to catch up with you, and make sure to leave in the comments, either on Twitter or on YouTube, what you thought about this game, what your concerns, what your bold predictions. We'd love to hear it. You can find us at One Winning Pod anywhere you search. So we'll talk to you later in the week. Go Ravens.